I'll leave my phone number there. So now, this is a different format than this. But for me, personally, somebody might choose another way, and I never say no to it. As long as you're doing it the right way, whatever way you're doing it, it's fine, because that's what matters. But again, if you could understand it in so many ways, that then means you're becoming a good mathematician. All right. So here, I always tell my students one thing: change this to this format. So you got to change this to this format. Why? Because you understand this format really well. And that's me. How I like working from here, not there. So how we work with this format. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you, you see this brackets on the first number, my starting point. You remember our starting point is always the first number. This brackets right here, there's no need. They write it in the textbook, but this bracket mean nothing. You could just change this to -8 right there. This brackets does nothing. However, here it does. All right. So if we have, and I'm just going to write this right here, like this, and there's a number here, you change this to minus, because negative and a plus always give you a negative, because they are right besides one another. When the signs are in this format, they're written besides one another, just know that when it's negative and plus opposite signs, the sign becomes -2. So this is what this becomes, okay? So let's change all of these first, and then we start doing them this way. Now, as I said, that +7 in the brackets mean nothing. So you could write this as a +7 if you want to write the plus, or you just write 7, because if you write 7, that means there's a plus, or invisible plus in front of it that we don't need to write. If you write it, there's nothing wrong with it. And here, a negative and a plus, or even if it was a plus and negative, let's say, assume that this was a plus minus right here. It's the same thing, because these signs are opposite, then we could just change it to minus. Positive and negative will always be negative. Again, as we said, this positive here means nothing, so I'm just gonna write this as 8. And then now we have a negative and a negative, minus brackets negative. When you have two signs besides one another like this, and they are the same sign, if they are plus and a plus, or a negative and a negative, then they always become a plus. So again, opposite signs become negative, like positive and minus here. Let me just make this nicer. It looks kind of. So if we have opposite signs besides one another, and this format in the question there, always change them to one sign. If they're opposite signs, you make them into negative. If they're like signs, you make them into positive. And now this is -9. We have to write the negative now. The brackets means nothing. And minus and negative, two signs that are the same, negative and negative, they become plus. And now, again, we go back and we say here, this is -8 minus 2. We start off at -8, which is -6, -7. This, my starting point is the -8. Okay, so that's where -8 is. That's where we're starting. And then since we are minusing, if we're minusing, as I said, we go left. And if we're adding, we go right. So -8 minus 2 is going to take us to -10. So that's going to answer. So -10. And then here, 7 minus 4, that's the old thing that you always dealt with. 7 minus 4, it's easy. So we could say 3. If you want to see it using the number line, you're at 7 and you're minusing. So minusing 4 from there, you're going to go left 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's going to take you to 3. And this is 8 plus 5, that's 13. And then -9, which is, I'm just going to use a red pen. -9 is right here. Okay. And then you're plusing 2. So you go 2 to the right, because plus means goes 2 to the right. And it takes you to -7. If you don't get it, ask before we go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to ask. Either send me a message privately, or just even message here. It's okay. If you don't understand it, just ask again. We'll make it clear for you. And at the same time, I always tell you, like, you should arrive to your conclusion that you're not doing a number line in a few months from now. You're not doing the number line and say, oh, I know exactly what's happening. You know, this is going to give me this is going to give me that. But always when you have this format right here, change it to this. That's what I recommend. But again, if it's your choice. Okay.
I'm kind of struggling with the 8 one, like the 8 positive 8 minus negative 5 one. I kind of didn't really quite hear for that one.
Okay, good. So the positive, I said this brackets here mean nothing. They just write it to maybe confuse you, but it means nothing. You could get rid of it right away. There's a plus here. We don't have to write that plus. If it's a minus, then we have to write it, because when we write an 8 by itself, we know there's a plus in front of it. And then the minus negative, because these two signs are the same, always like signs when they are besides one another like this, they give you positive. Unlike signs, when they, like here and here, they're opposite or they're unlike signs, and here, they give you minus. So two signs that are the same, they always give you plus. And two signs that are different, they always give you minus. Is that what you're asking? Is it who's asking here? Phoebe? Is it Phoebe? Because you're raising your hand. It doesn't matter. But is that what your question is, or you want me to elaborate a little bit more?
I'm kind of confused. Like, how is it 13 for a sec? Because like positive 18, like I thought you would have to like go back 5 more. Like.
Okay, give me. Okay, let me just get there.
But I kind of understand. I got it now.
Okay, so it's 8 plus 5. So if you're sitting at 8, okay, which is right here, I don't have the whole thing in a number line because you're plussing. I said if you're plussing, you're moving right. 5. Where's that going to take you?
Like
to 13. Even though I don't have all the number line, but you're adding 8 plus 5 here. So just simply 8 plus 5. Is that clear or no?
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay, good. Phoebe, are you raising your hand?
I think I was trying to figure out the buttons and I accidentally pressed the hand thing, but
okay, no problem. Yeah. So you don't have a question though?
No, I'm good.
It's all good. Everybody happy with the way I'm showing you this? If you don't say no, I'm gonna assume you're good. Okay. All right. So I have to write down. Okay. I understand. Good. Beautiful. So I'm going to go now to the second page where we're going to have more than one number. So here, again, the first thing we got to do is get rid of those brackets. They're ugly. They're too crowded. Too many signs, we don't want them. We want just to deal with one sign at all times. So as I said, this brackets mean nothing, but this is a -8. So I have to write it as -8. -1 plus, it's going to give me, in this format right here, is going to give me minus, because as I said, if they're opposite signs, you get a minus here. And I don't want you to confuse that with multiplying, negative times positive, it gives you negative. We're not doing any multiplication here. We're only doing adding and subtracting. So when you see this format and adding and subtracting, that's what we need to follow. So that's -3 plus and a minus, opposite signs is going to give me -5. Negative and a plus, opposite signs is going to give me -7 equals. So we got rid of that dilemma. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. That's -230. Negative plus, that's going to be -300. Negative and negative, that's a plus 50. Negative and negative, that's a plus 40. Positive and positive, there's the same sign, so they're going to give me positive. Equals, and we're going to answer this later. So now we get rid of that dilemma, signs, too many signs, everything, and we write here. So let's go to this question right here. It seems like we're -8, and then we're -3, we're -5, we're -7. So from -8, since we're minusing all the time, let me explain it to you another way. So from -8, my starting point, and we're minusing, that means we're going left all the time. So every time you minus, you go left. So if we're going left every time, don't we know that the answer is going to be minus, and I could just add all these numbers? So that's the conclusion I want you to arrive to. Maybe I'm jumping a bit too early, But if I'm sitting at -8 right here, okay, this is where my starting point is. Maybe too many numbers, so I'm kind of not going to be as happy. But now I'm minusing 3, go 3 this way, and then I'm minusing 5, I'm going 5 more this way, and then I'm minusing 7, I'm going 7 this way, and I'm going to land at the answer. Now, if that's what's happening, then isn't it the answer is going to be minus, and all I need to do is just add all these numbers? And that's going to give me minus 23. Now, if you're lost with this, let me know. Okay. So can you just raise your hand or just send me a note and say, can you repeat this again if you don't understand it? If you're happy, just press that happy face on the chat. But as I said, this is always the first number is my starting point. And if I'm minusing, I'm going left. So I'm starting at -8, which is right here. And then from -8, I'm minusing 3. That means I'm going left 3. And then I'm minusing 5. That means I'm going left 5. And then I'm minusing 7. That means I'm going left 7. This simply means the answer is going to be negative. And all you need to do is just add all these numbers. 7 plus 5 is 12, plus 3 is 15, plus 8 is 23. And that's why the answer is minus 23. So that's my starting point right here, the -8, because that's -8. So that's where I'm starting. Then I'm minusing 3. So I go 3 this way. And then I'm minusing 5. Then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm here. And then I'm minusing 7. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to get right here. Now that's, if you count it out, that's -8, -9, -10, -11, -12, -13, -14, -15, -16, -17, -18, -19, -20, -21, -22, -23. That's the answer. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. So now I'm going to ask, and you could talk on the speaker if you want, if you know how to make this easier. Can I make this easier? This question right here. So if you know, just tell me, let me know. You could just go ahead and talk on the mic.
Yeah.
Anybody? Yes.
If you combine the 50, 40, and 233, like plus them all together, and then there's just less of numbers to deal with, kind of, I think.
Okay, Phoebe, I'm looking for something more specific. If anybody sees it, just let me know. I like doing all of this because this have zeros and at the end and stuff is not as bad as it looks. But there's one thing, if you do, this question becomes faster. Let's not say easier, faster. So can anybody elaborate? Don't be scared, say it, like doesn't matter. Just spit it out and let's share this with everybody. If you're not able to talk, just okay. Marianne, good job, Marianne. So Marianne said cancel out the -230 and 230. That's how you make this question easy. Now, some of you say, what? Why are we canceling them out? Because if you look at this right here, and you look at this, aren't they the opposite numbers of one another? Like -230 and +230, they're opposite. So if they're opposite, that means they cancel each other out. If this was minus right here, then we cannot do that. But just because this is a minus and this is a plus, then right away I could say, gosh, I could cancel this right away and it's finished. I don't have to deal with these big numbers anymore. Does it make sense? If it doesn't to anybody, ask, because I'll elaborate on it. Okay, so just let me know if it doesn't make sense, and I'll just show it to you on the number line as well. Of course, I'm not gonna draw 230 lines here because I think that will take the whole class, and the whole class will be done before we finish that. Okay, so let me just show you on the number line. So if this is 0 and this is negative 230 right here. Okay. So this is negative 230 right here. That's where we start, don't we? Negative 230. And if we just jump, of course, you know when you're doing this, let me say something else as well. Sometimes you want to do this and this first because it's easier. You could jump, you could do this and come back to this and then do this and then do this. You could jump anywhere when you have this kind of operation. And that's why we jumped from here to here, because we didn't do this, and then this. We say we're going to do this and this first because that is right away, it cancels. And you could do it all at one time. You don't have to say, okay, negative 230 minus 300 is negative 530, and then you write 50 plus 40 plus 230. You don't have to do that. That's just, I think, time consuming. You could do this operation all at once. Okay. So, but now let's just look at the negative 230 and the plus 230 because we want to make life easier. So negative 230 is my starting point right here. Okay. Now, if we're plussing, like just go negative 230 plus 230 because the 230 has a plus in front of it. Negative 230 plus 230. That means I'm going to go 230 this way. So if I go 230 this way, I'm going to get to 0, don't I? And that's what it means. If there are two numbers, they have the opposite signs, you could cancel them out right away. And when you start learning how to do this, you'll make your life a lot easier in the future. You know, it might sound like, oh, we could just take our time doing this and do the whole thing, but you should start recognizing things like this and say, oh, let's get rid of this and make this a lot easier. Now, I'm gonna ask everybody to write down the answer for this operation right here. I just want to know how everybody does on this, because now these are gone. So I ask everyone to write what the answer is on this. Okay. So I think all of you got the right answer. And I'll move on to the next page. Okay. Excellent, guys. If you have any questions, please ask me before I move on to the next page. Now we finished the adding and subtracting, and we're going to go to the multiplying and multiplying and dividing. So whatever applies in multiplying, it applies in dividing. Okay. So multiply, divide is the same thing. So when you multiply in integers means it could be a negative or a positive number. If you multiply in opposite signs, you always get a negative answer. If you're multiplying like signs, you always get positive answer. And if you're multiplying anything by 0, you always get 0. And if you're dividing by 0, it's undefined, just to add this as well. So multiplying by 0, you get 0, but dividing by 0, you get undefined. Okay. Now, of course, negative times positive is going to be negative. 7 times 8 is 56. Make sure if your multiplication table is not strong, the multiplication table is key for all math. Is key for algebra, is key for everything that you do in math. If your multiplication table is weak, then you could have issues. Okay. Negative times negative is positive. As I said, when you multiply like signs, you get positive, and that's 12. You could write positive 12, or you don't have to write the positive sign. You could just put 12, and we know it's positive. Negative 3 times 4, you see, let me go back now. When you have brackets like this besides one another, it means multiplication. Okay. Now, some of you might ask me, well, and before you said we have to do changes and all of that. Why you're not doing that here? Now let's go back. Now look at this, really. Look at this. Like take a good look at this, okay? And then let me go back here and I'll explain to you why that page wasn't the same as this page. You see between the brackets here in these pages, there is a sign always between the brackets right here. And that's why what we were doing next is not the same as this. Here you just have numbers that are multiplied, and we're designating those numbers by a negative or a positive. And you don't have to write it like this. This means multiplication, but even if you write it like this, it means multiplication. So -3 times +4 is -12, because negative times positive is negative. This might be a lot of students, oh, I know this already, but just be patient. We're going to get to fractions after this, and it'll be a bit harder. But just we want to make sure everybody is clear with the signs. Okay. Now here, two things you could do. Okay, you could go negative, like first of all, figure out the sign. You say negative times negative is positive, positive times negative is negative, negative times negative is positive. Or another way to look at this, when you have too many numbers, count how many negatives that you're multiplying or dividing. Okay, so if you're multiplying 4 negatives, so you have 4 negatives here, you have an even number of negatives. Okay. If you have an even number of negatives, the answer is always positive. Here, how many negatives we have when we multiply in all of this? We have 3. So this is odd. It's an odd number of negatives. When you have an odd number of negatives, when you multiply them, you're going to get negative. That's in multiplication and division. Okay, and you could use that with fractions as well. You just count how many negatives you have when you're multiplying or dividing. If it's an even number, then the answer is going to be positive. If it's an odd number, then the answer is going to be negative. Okay. In number 4, in the fourth one, remove this negative and make the negative positive. Yusuf, I don't know. I think here, because all of these are multiplied. You remember, like this is not -2 minus -3 plus -4 minus -1. It's not like that. It's this is just the operation here is multiplying. When it's written like this is an addition question, addition and subtraction here, but here this is multiplying. So this is not related to this. So for the fourth one, can just remove the -1 and make the negative positive. I'm not 100% what you're really saying. If you could maybe write it, send a picture, but I think it's, or that's my opinion, you're multiplying too many numbers. Even if you have 1 million numbers, just look at how many negatives you have. If you have an even number of negatives, you know the answer is going to be positive. And if you have an odd number of negatives when you apply, and see when I say odd, there's 1, 2, 3 negatives. So you know the answer is going to be negative. So now we're not doing adding and subtracting integers. We're multiplying and dividing. That's what we're doing, multiplying and dividing integers. Okay. So when we're multiplying or dividing integers, we count how many negatives are we multiplying. If it's even number of negatives that we're multiplying, the answer should be positive. And if we are multiplying an odd number of negatives, so here if you count how many negatives we have that we're multiplying, you have 3 negatives. So if it's odd, then the answer, odd number of negatives, then the answer should be negative. If it's even, like here, 1, 2, 3, 4, then the answer should be positive. Does that make sense? So now we know the answer is going to be positive. Ignore the signs now, just multiply the numbers. So you go 2 times 3 is 6, 6 times 4 is 24, 24 times 1 is 24. So the answer is 24. And now here, we know the answer is negative. We don't look at the signs anymore. We just look at the numbers. 1 times 1 is 1, times 9 is 9, times 2 is 18. So we know the answer is going to be -18, okay? And I'm not taking a long time on this because I know we're going to do this again in fractions. And this is how you could make it simple. When you have a lot of things that are multiplied, just follow this rule and you will never get them wrong. But also you could just go, okay, negative times positive, that's negative. Now we have a negative times negative, that's positive. Positive times negative is going to be negative. You could still do that as well. All right. I'm going to move on to the next page. If you have a question, just ask. So you could just start writing the answers. I'm just going to write you a few questions and I'd like you to do them. Here's, I made this one a little bit more challenging. Now, if you'd like, go ahead and write the answers for all these questions. Okay, almost there. So the time is ticking down, 30 seconds. I think we have everyone's answer. Okay, so now let me talk about the first one. At the beginning, I wrote one rule that says when you multiply anything by 0, doesn't matter, even if it's 1 billion numbers, and if you multiply them by 0, the answer is always 0. So that's the first thing you do, because this 0 here, it doesn't matter what that gives you, it will be 0. So you shouldn't be doing this at all and wasting time. You see a 0 here, you say, yeah, the answer is 0. I'm not even gonna like it. And that's why I made the numbers a little bit ugly. You know, they're a bit big. I was gonna make them small, and then I thought the students are gonna do all this stuff in here, and then they forget there's a 0 here. So I made the numbers big to deter you from trying this and say, oh, there's a 0. So the answer is 0. So that's the first thing. Okay. Negative divided by negative is positive. So this answer is definitely positive 9. Oh, oops, positive 2, sorry. Here, it's positive, even though we don't write positive here, it's positive divided by negative. When you divide opposite signs, you always get negative, and that's gonna be 9. Now here's this one right here. Negative divided by negative times a negative. Even though we mix the division and the multiplication together, but the same rule applies. Whenever it's division and multiplication, if that's the only case, it's just division and multiplication, you could still count your negatives. If the number of negatives is odd, then the answer should be negative. And if the number of negatives is even, then it's positive. So here the answer is negative. And you go 15 divided by 5 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So anyone who got those 4 answers, you got it right. Just ask a question right now. If you got it wrong and you don't see how I got my answers, just make sure you ask me that question. And I'll number them 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's just, if there's any one of them that you don't get really well, write the number. If it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then I'll elaborate a little bit more on it. Okay. Otherwise, in 10 seconds, I'm just going to move on to the next thing. Okay, so there's no question, so I'm just going to move on. Now let's change this a little bit. It's going to get into a little bit of fractions, but we're not going to get into like the common denominator and this and that. But before I even get into fractions with negative numbers, I want to do a little bit of basic fractions. Okay. So please answer these questions really fast for me, and then I'll move on to the ones that I'm going to do. So just write them, you know, if you could just write slash for the answer. If it's the answer is still a fraction, you just like, let's say if it's 2/3, then you can just go 2/3 or whatever. So I'll give you time to write your answers. And I expect you to be quick with this. No, I'm just kidding. Take your time. Okay. So now if you finished, just pay attention to what I'm saying. Pay real attention, because fractions, you have to understand them, because everything in math evolves around multiplication table fractions. If you don't get fractions, you'll have a hard time later on in math. Okay, so I'm gonna start with number 3 first. And let me emphasize one thing here. When you multiply in fractions, if any teacher told you to multiply the tops together and write the answer, and multiply the bottoms together and write the answer on the bottom, tell them that's bad, because the numbers will get big on me and then I cannot see how I could reduce them. So you don't want the numbers to get big on you, because once the numbers get big on you, you will not be able to reduce them, and you won't be able to see that factor that goes into them. Okay. So when you multiply in fractions, always look diagonally this way or this way. Okay. And see, how could I reduce this number? So let's look at the 3 and the 15. I know 3 goes into itself and it goes into 15. 3 goes into itself once. You cross it out, you put 1 on top, and 3 goes into 15 5 times. And then you got to look this way as well. Again, 7 goes into itself once, and it goes into 14 twice. So the answer for this is 2/5. That's the answer for this one. So reducing is very, very important, because otherwise the numbers are going to get big on you, and then you'll struggle reducing them. So reducing, you always reduce diagonally, and make sure that you reduce before you multiply the tops and you multiply the bottoms. Once you reduce and you cannot reduce any further, then you could say, now I'm multiplying the tops. 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 5 is 5. How about when we multiply a whole number by a fraction? When we multiply a whole number by a fraction, a lot of teachers tell you to write 1 on underneath here. You go ahead, that's no problems. If you want to write that, go ahead and write it. But if you multiply in a number times a fraction, just know this whole number, you could always reduce it with that bottom or the denominator of the fraction. So this here, this number, you should reduce it with the bottom of the fraction all the time. That's what you want to do. So here, if I look at this, I go, okay, 6 goes into itself once, and it goes into 30 5 times. Even though I don't have anything underneath the 30, there's an imaginary 1 underneath there if you want to write it. And if it helps you, you could do that. Now, once you reduce, and you cannot reduce any further, multiply the tops together. 5 times 1 is 5. And 1 times 1 on the bottom, you just get 1. And if you have 1 on the bottom, 5 over 1, it just gives you 5. Always understand that when we have fractions, like let's say 15/3, fractions means this divided by this. Fractions mean division, top divided by bottom. That's what it means. That's the most important thing with fractions, that you should know that fractions means the top divided by the bottom. It could give you a whole number like here, 15 divided by 3 is 5, or it could give you a decimal. We don't know, but it means it's division. So that's why I'm saying that, like, if you multiply 5 times 1 is 5, and you multiply 1 times 1, you get 1 on the bottom. You know 5 divided by 1 is going to give you 5. So when it's a 1 underneath, you don't even have to write it. Okay, and I will go, Yusuf, Nigar, I will go to answer some of your questions when I'm done with this. But let me just finish this and make a point first, and then I'll start answering the questions, and then we'll open the floor for questions. And anybody who wants to ask a question will do it, and then I could give you some more to do on your own, and then we'll go through them so you could practice. Okay, so again, here we have a whole number times a fraction. So we said if we have a whole number times a fraction, we know we're going to see if this whole number and the bottom of the fraction could be reduced. Okay, so yes, 5 goes into itself once and goes into 15 3 times. Now you only multiply that 1 to the top of the fraction. Okay, so you get 2, and on the bottom you have 3. So the answer is 2/3. If we have 3 times 5 sevens, you look this way now and you cannot reduce because 3 and 7, they don't reduce. Then all you need to do is just multiply the 3 to the top, which is 15, and you get 7 on the bottom. You don't do anything with the 7. You don't multiply the 3 to the 7 because this is over 1. We don't have to write the 1, but it's over 1. So what you multiply to the bottom is the denominator, which is 1 times 7 is 7. Okay. So now, please let me know if you have any questions about what I did here. But it's, I ask grade 12 students always. And I'm going to ask all of you right now. And I want you to write your answer really quick. Like, as soon as I'm done, it shouldn't take 15 seconds to write the answer. Okay, so let me ask you this question. The 24 times 1/4. 24 times 1/4. Your answer really quick. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. Yeah. Good. Waiting. 24 times 1/4. Three more seconds. Yeah, I'm gonna explain this to you. I always test my students. Grade 12. I test grade 12 students, believe it or not. Grade 12 students. And they have a hard time doing this in their head really fast. Okay. So let me just write it. 24 times 1/4. Do you think it's the grade 12 students' fault that they don't understand, they don't know how to do this really fast in their head? No, it's not. It's the system. It's the way they teach math in North America. I call it the caveman math. When you multiply in 24 times 1/4, if you want to do this really fast, just know this operation here, it means 24 divided by 4. That's what it means. This means 24 divided by 4. Really quick. Or again, just reduce, goes into itself once, goes into 24 6 times. 4 goes into itself once, it goes into 24 6 times. But for me, as soon as I hear something like this, because it's a whole number, this is a whole number, it's not a fraction multiplied by a fraction, I know always if I could divide the whole number by the bottom, that's where I get my answer really fast. So that would be 6. Okay, so now I'm just going to give you some questions. I want you to do them on your own. And I'm going to give you a tough one towards the end. It's order of operations. I want you to give it a try as well. So let me know if there's a way that we could have everybody answer privately. So I know sometimes you feel embarrassed and you feel like, oh, everybody's getting it right, and I'm not getting it right. But for me, I need to slow down when I know like some of you are not getting it right. I have to go back and explain it to you again. Okay, these questions, I'll tell you something though. I explained to you the easy stuff, and I made like this question here is a bit different. This question is a bit different, and this question is a bit different than what I explained. So don't worry about these. This is just more challenging, and we'll see how we guys do, and then we'll answer them together. Okay. Yeah, okay. So you could just send it to me only. So yeah, thanks, Yusuf. You're the IT person in there, so that's good. Maybe you don't have to even display your answers. Like if everybody is done, then I'm gonna do them and then compare your answers. And if your answer is not right, you message me privately, and then I'll just go over it again. Okay. So try to see how we do it the way I explain it, and then see if you get the right answer. So I'm going to start off with the first one right here. So the first one would be, we're going to rewrite this, of course, because we don't like this format. So it's going to be -14. Plus and a minus is going to be -4. And negative and a negative is going to be +5. So now we have -14 minus 40. Remember, we're sitting at the number line, and we're sitting, if that's 0, we're sitting at -14 somewhere here. And then since we're minusing, we're going left this way to 4. So that takes me to -18. And then when we get to -18, we're plusing 5. Then we have to go 5 this way. And that's going to give me from -18 going 5 this way is going to get me to -13. Okay. Some students, they would do this as, because these numbers are smaller, they go -4 plus 5 is +1. So they rewrite this as -14, and -4 plus 5 gives me +1. So they could do it like that. And then -14, you're sitting at -14. And then you go back 1, that takes you to -13. So whichever way works for you, that's fine. So that's the first one. Now, the second one right here, it's, as I said, when you're doing multiplication and dividing all together, you count how many negatives you have. If you have an odd number of negatives, the answer will be negative. And now the order of operations, a lot of students and even some adults and some teachers agree about this. When it's multiplication and division, what order do we do the order of operations or the BEDMAS in? So if it's multiplication and division, or only you do it in the order it's written. So it's written this way, you go in this order right here. So you go -9 times -4, or we know the answer is negative. So we're just going to go 9 times 4, which is 36. 36 divided by 3 is 12. So the answer is -12. Yeah. Now, I hope so far so good. Now I'm going to look at this right here. Okay. So BEDMAS, and I know a lot of you who are, past grade 7, they taught you about BEDMAS. So BEDMAS means you do what's inside the brackets first, and then exponents, which we will not be dealing with for a while. We're not going to go to exponents till later in the course. But then division and multiplication. Now you could argue, well, division is written before multiplication. No, division and multiplication, it's like one thing. So, and when it comes to division and multiplication, you do them in the order they're written, okay? And then addition and subtraction. So addition and subtraction, also you do it in the order it's written. It doesn't have to be division before multiplication, or multiplication or multiplication before division. You do it in the order it's written. So here it's written like multiplying and then dividing, you do it in that order, okay? But now for this one right here, you have to do inside the brackets first. So -30 minus 20 will give you -50. Remember, because we're sitting at -30, and since we're minusing 20, we're going left 20, that's gonna take us to -50 minus, I'm gonna put brackets here, and -20 minus 30, we're sitting at -20, we're going like, that's my starting point, and then we're going left 30, that's also gonna take me to -50. And then we have -50. You remember when I said when we have two signs written like this besides one another, when we're adding and subtracting, we change it to one sign, which is plus. Negative and negative will give you plus. -50 plus 50 will give you 0, because you notice it's the opposite, so you're sitting at -50 starting point, and then going 50 to the right, that's going to take you to 0. Now, how about this? This is a little bit different. This I didn't cover for you. I just want to throw it in and see if anybody is going to take a crack at it, but it's not related. It's related, but it's, at the same time, it's a bit more challenging. And let me elaborate about this. Here, the best way to do this yeah, and that's fine too, Nigar. Yeah, that's fine too. Yeah, as I said, you could arrive to the answer in different ways. This doesn't have to be the same as me, as long as you get in the right answer. But if you're using a method and sometimes you get in it right, but few times you get in it wrong, then that method, maybe you have to find out why you're not getting the right answer all the time, and you should follow one method that gives you the right answer all the time. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, with this question right here, whenever you have fractions, so the operation on top of this fraction on the numerator is multiplying this by this, and this fraction means, or sorry, the bottom here is also this multiplied by this, but also this right here, it means we're dividing all of this by all of this. So let me just say that one more time. On top, it means this times this. On the bottom, it means this times this. But also this fraction means all of this divided by all of this. So some students will choose to multiply the top, put it here, multiply the bottom, put it on the bottom, and then reduce later. For me personally, I would tell students, try to reduce top and bottom if you can. So now, since we're doing multiplication and division, it's the same like here, you know, we're doing multiplication and division. We count how many signs we have. If we have an even number of negatives, then the answer is going to be positive. Because again, here is this times this divided by this times this. So again, still we're dealing with multiplication and division. And when we're dealing with only multiplication and division, we could count how many signs we have, how many negative signs we have. If we have an odd number of negatives, the answer is negative. If we have an even number of negatives, the answer is positive. And then I could just start reducing now. I go 8 goes into itself once, it goes into 24 3 times. 4 goes into itself once, it goes into 12 3 times. This 3 goes into itself once, and 3 goes into itself once. So now we have 1 times 1 on the top and 1 times 1 on the bottom. 1 over 1 would just give me 1 as the answer. Okay, we have 2 more minutes. I'm gonna do this right here. And this here order of operations indicate we have to do this first and then this. So we have to do these before we proceed. So this is the question right here. Now again, it's bed mass. So brackets, we don't have too many, we only have one thing in every bracket. So here the brackets, it doesn't matter. We're not doing brackets. It's here, it's between this, between no exponents. It's between division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. That's what you're dealing with right now. So whenever we're doing division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction, we know we have to do here the division, we have to do that first. So now if we go negative 36 divided by negative 4, can we agree the answer is going to be positive 9? Okay. And this minus, then we got to do this. So what it means I'm going to write that minus sign. I'm not going to do any minusing here. I have to do this operation because all of this is multiplication and division. We cannot subtract before we do all the multiplication and division. So here, if I'm looking at this, this is 6 times negative 5, or positive 6 times negative 5, which is negative 30. Negative 30 divided by positive 3, negative 30 divided by positive 3 gives me negative 10. So I put this in brackets as negative 10. Is it better, or you want me to go over it again? Good. Marianne? Got it? Hold on a second. We haven't finished, Nigar. We haven't finished. This is not the answer. We still have a lot of numbers. We have 9 minus negative 10. Remember, we said when it's minus and negative, we don't like that. We write it as 9 plus 10, which gives me 19. Yeah. So if it makes sense, that's good. What I want you to do, all of you have my email. If there's one that you struggled with, just email it to me. Tell me, write the question down, email it to me. And then when we start next time on next Sunday, I'll start off with that first. Okay. And what's y'all Discord? I have no idea what Discord is. I don't use it. But if you guys want to get together and do stuff together and stuff like that, help each other out. That's amazing. Now you have to answer with all honesty. How did it go? Like, was this good? Was my explanation clear? Was I going a bit too fast? So I need your feedback. And you could say bad. You say, Sammy, you're bad. And I don't mind if you say that either.
No, I understand a lot than the actual teachers out there.
That's good. Thank you. Yusuf, what do you think? You didn't give me your feedback, buddy. Okay. Now, Daniel. What is Daniel? He's being quiet. Or is he still here? No, Daniel's still here. Hey, good job, Jude. Yeah, most of you gave me your feedback. Yeah. Phoebe, you still there? Or you left? You had to go, I guess. So I'm going to close this room soon because I have another class. And I'll email you all of this again, guys. Like if you want to watch it again and clarify a few things, I'll email this. I might just post it on my YouTube after I tweak it a little bit and make it better. And then I could put it on my YouTube channel, or just send it to you privately, and then you could look at this again. But to be honest, like you really have to understand this stuff and make sure you master it, because these are the things that get students in the future, because they're making mistakes on the basic things, and they didn't understand the basic things, and then they don't do as well in grade 11 and grade 12 and grade 10. So make sure your foundation is strong. Okay. Thank you all. Thanks a lot for watching today, and thanks a lot for paying attention. I'm glad you all like the lesson, and it's helpful for you. I do have a long experience, and I'm good at what I do. So it's I come highly recommended in the city of Victoria as a math tutor, and I'm a substitute teacher at one of the schools here. A lot of you students are not from Victoria. I know some of you are from Montreal, Quebec, and Ontario. And we have even Manitoba. So again, thanks for watching, or thanks for attending the lesson. I'm used to doing my YouTube channel. I will see you next time. If you have any question before I leave and before I shut this room down, just let me know. Otherwise, it's going to be 10 seconds and I'm going to shut this room down. Thank you.